Welcome to the Master Your Magnetism podcast, where I interview top experts to help you create the life and relationship you've always wanted. Today, I'm talking with Matt Shaffer, my very good friend and fellow coach. Welcome, Matt. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, Helena. I'm so excited to be back here. I always love connecting with you.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to diving
Mhm.
into this topic. I've been getting so many questions about this from the women in my community. Today, we're going to be sharing 3 steps to get a man to open up to you. Even if he's a little shut down or maybe a little avoidant, Matt is the perfect person to bring on and
Mhm.
talk about this. He's an empowerment, relationship, and connection coach who helps women connect more deeply with themselves so they can experience more love and intimacy in their romantic relationships. So, Matt, let's dive in. Is there anything you want to say before we jump into this topic?
Well, I'm so honored to be here, Helena. I love connecting with your community, and I'd love to offer as we dive in here a little free gift. I'm going to be offering a free run of my Mastery of Magnetism live course this February, and we've done this before, haven't we?
Absolutely. I always say that this is hands down my favorite thing to offer to the women in my community. I offer so many free ebooks and programs from all of my expert friends. And this is the #1 course I recommend. And it's totally free. So I'll include a link in the description or the episode details if you'd like to apply to be a
Mhm.
part of this free course. Also, I forgot to mention we're recording this episode for YouTube as well. So if you'd like to see a video of this episode, I'll include that link in the description as well.
Let's party. No, I'm excited about it. And I'm excited to dive into this topic because truly, men have a tendency to get distant and put walls up, right? And there's a lot of
Mhm.
reasons why that can happen, right? Oftentimes they have unresolved trauma or stories around intimacy, right? Like maybe the only time they've experienced vulnerability in past relationships is during fights, is during
Mhm.
conflicts. Like maybe the only time they ever heard their parents talk about feelings is when their parents were screaming at each other, right? And additionally, maybe they have walls up or they've shut down because they don't feel understood or don't feel that anyone truly cares about their feelings. I know for a lot of my life, I didn't feel like anyone cared about my feelings, right? Because there's this pressure that is put on men to just show up and do the work. Like it's our job to provide and to do the work, and our feelings are just determined to be weaknesses or liabilities. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And we did a whole podcast episode just on that, right? Those core masculine
Mm-hmm.
wounds that
Yes, we
most
did.
men have, and how the feminine energy partner can help a man open up and heal some of those wounds. Not that it's your job to fix a man or heal or fix all of
Yeah.
his problems, but I highly recommend checking out that podcast episode. We talked for over an hour just on that. So that's available on my podcast over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's such an important topic. So, yeah, what is that first step to help a man start to open up?
So, the first step to help a man to really open up is to demonstrate that you care about his feelings,
Mm,
right? Because most men have created a narrative that no one really cares about how they feel, truly. So, asking him open ended feeling questions, simply asking him, like, how are you doing? How are you? And not even, you don't even have to say the word feeling. How are you doing? And really holding space for him to open up to you, right? Nobody really even asks men that. And a
mhm.
random woman that I had just met at work asking me how I was doing saved my life when I was in a very deep depressive state in my own life, right? Or while he's in the middle of telling a story and he's just going through the series of events. Well, I went to work and I did this and I checked out this and then this happened and whatever. As he's talking about the events of his day, interrupt him and ask him, "Oh, how did that make you feel?"
Mhm.
Right? Like, oh, he's talking when he talks about a challenge that he said, wow, that must have been really challenging. How'd you feel about that? And just keep inviting him and giving him opportunities to speak into his feelings, right? And one important distinction I want to make here is when you are asking a man questions and inviting him to feel and inviting him to express his feelings, the energy behind those questions gets to be loving. It gets to be open. You want to demonstrate that you're genuinely curious, right? Not that you're trying to pry, not that you're trying to, butt into his stuff, but that you're truly curious about how he felt.
That is so
Because
important.
does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I love that story you shared about the woman who you didn't even know, and she started asking you questions like that. And it changed the whole trajectory of your life. It
It
helped you
really
get into
did.
this self development work. You shared the whole story on our last podcast episode on core masculine wounds and how to help a man open up and heal. So if anyone's interested, definitely go check out that episode. It's so
Mhm.
important. I think a lot of men don't naturally want to just be vulnerable and open up. I think we've talked before in other interviews we've done, Matt, that men just default back to not being emotionally intimate. It's just easier for them a lot of times, right?
It's a comfort zone thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just where men tend to reside because it's a safe place for them, right? And so what you're helping a man to do is to wire in a new understanding that emotional expression can also be safe. That
Mm,
emotional expression can be healing, right? So you want to think of yourself as an emotional sanctuary for him, that you are his safe place, right? For him to be emotionally vulnerable because he can't talk about his feelings at work and he's not going to talk about his feelings with his parents because usually they're the reason why he has emotional intimacy problems to begin with, right? So we
yeah.
don't have an outlet for our emotions. So by demonstrating that you care about his feelings, you're helping to cultivate this new understanding that you are a safe place for him to be vulnerable, which he may have never had truly
It's
in
so
his life. Because
true.
we don't even talk with our friends about our feelings very rarely, you know?
Yeah, men don't have those kinds of connections typically. So if you can be
Mm,
that one person in a man's life that he can open up to and he feels safe with, you'll just be irreplaceable, right? And I do want to
mm-mm,
mention that this isn't about coddling a man's ego. I get
mm-mm.
comments like that all the time, right? It's about helping him open up and be vulnerable if he's shown you that he wants to be a good partner to you. So if a man is completely avoidant or emotionally unavailable and he's not even participating or putting in effort, that's not what we're talking about here, right? This is for if he's a good partner generally and just needs a little encouragement to open up, right?
Exactly, exactly. This is for someone who maybe has wounds, like a good
Mm-hmm.
person who just maybe have wounds around intimacy and resistance to intimacy, but he genuinely does care about you and he wants to go there. You know, a lot of
Yes.
times we just don't know how
So
as
true.
men.
Yeah. So, what is that second step that you wanted to share here, Matt?
So the second step to get a man to open up is you want to be open to
Mm,
him, towards him in the way that you want to receive from him. You want to be open towards him. You got to remember that relationship is a mirror. Whatever you are putting out into relationship is going to get reflected back to you in some way or another, right? So by you demonstrating and by speaking words on your feelings, by being open and vulnerable towards him, you're helping him understand that this is normal in relationship. You're helping him understand that this is how people can talk in relationship. I mean, I had a family where my parents didn't express negative emotions towards each other. They had a no
hmm
fight policy. Throughout my entire childhood. So I didn't understand that adults in relationship had constructive conflict with each
mm,
other. So that was something that I had to teach myself later on. And I had a ton of resistance to even voicing any type of adverse opinion to my partner. The first time a girl got mad at me and I actually experienced that, I like freaked out because I was like, well,
mm.
that's not allowed, in my head, because I had never experienced that before. So by being open, by being vulnerable with him, by demonstrating and speaking into your feelings, you're giving him permission to do the same back to you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Often, as the feminine energy partner, we have to sometimes go first because we have a lot more flexibility and agency. We weren't necessarily brought up in the same way as men were, generally speaking. Of course, there's always
Mhm.
exceptions to this, but
Yes.
for a lot of women, they were brought up that it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel your feelings, where a lot of men are taught that it's not okay to do that, that showing your emotions or feeling anything means that you're weak or you're not masculine. So a lot of men are shut down in that area, right?
We 100% are. And a way I want you to think of this is the concept of you are the conductor. If love is a
Mm,
symphony, you are the conductor of the emotional and communicative aspects of your relationship. So you're up there on the podium, you have your little baton, and you're inviting him, the man, the masculine musician in the orchestra, the doer. You are inviting him to engage in emotional expression. You are inviting him to communicate with you in a deeper, more vulnerable way, right? And so you want to check in with yourself, and you want to ask yourself, is the way that I'm showing up right now in relationship, is that representative of how I want him to show up to me? Am I inviting him to be vulnerable by demonstrating and expressing vulnerability to him?
So true. You want to be that example. And then if he doesn't meet you there, if he's not willing or able to meet you there, and that causes him to shut down or pull away even more, that's good
Mhm.
information for you to have quickly, right? So you
Yes,
can
it's
start
a
off
beautiful,
like that.
exactly. It's a beautiful filter. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful filter because, I mean, the whole thing you want to embrace is the cycle of invitation and space. You want to
Mm.
invite a man to take action and to step up and step in with you in ways that make you feel good, right? And then you want to make those invitations, and then you want to give him the space to step into them.
So great.
And if you
Yeah.
don't, and so if you do that and you give him space and you make invitations to him in a loving way time and time again, and he continues to stay back, he continues to not be vulnerable, he continues to not step into his power, to not honor you the way that you really want, then he's being clear that at some level he cannot or will not give you what you need.
Mm.
And then you can make an empowered, grounded decision to walk away from that relationship or to lovingly release that partner, you know?
Yeah, love it. But you're giving it its best shot of working out by using these steps. So I think that is so great. What is that third step that you wanted to share here?
So the third step, and this is a fundamental thing that men really crave, is to acknowledge any attempts or any efforts that he makes at vulnerability and openness. You want to acknowledge them with warmth and love.
Mm.
So you got an important thing you want to recognize is that the masculine is craving the acknowledgement of the feminine. We are craving being acknowledged for what we're doing, for our actions, right? So a lot of times for men, because we have way less emotional agency than women, we have a lot less experience talking about our feelings, accessing them, figuring out, what they mean. That when we start to talk about our feelings, we're like baby giraffes. We're like a baby giraffe falls out of its mama and it's walking around like a drunk guy on stilts. It's very awkward and very silly. That is how men feel a lot of times when we're being vulnerable. It's
Mhm.
scary. It's
Mhm.
awkward. It's not fun for us. And so anytime a man makes an attempt or makes an effort or takes action to engage in vulnerability in some way, it's really important to acknowledge him, to thank him for that, being like, hey, it really meant a lot to me when you shared with me your feelings about what a hard day you had, or about how what I did to you made you feel.
Mhm.
Even though it wasn't something that I necessarily was wanted to hear, it was beautiful to hear that, it's beautiful to hear you stepping into vulnerability, because you want a man to start to feel safe. And
Mhm.
that the fact that he's being vulnerable doesn't mean he's going to be punished.
So
Because
true.
a lot of
Yeah.
times that's the story that we have. Well, if I'm vulnerable, I'm going to be exploited for that. If
Mhm.
I'm open with my feelings in my heart, I'm going to be hurt. I'm going to be taken advantage of, or I'm going to be yelled at. I'm going to be emotionally blackmailed. There's a lot of different weird stories that men can have around that, because we've got a deep connection between vulnerability and openness and pain.
Oh yeah, probably a topic for a whole nother episode. I have a feeling we could talk forever just on that one point. So this was phenomenal, Matt. Would you like to recap these 3 steps, and then let's definitely talk about your free course too, especially when it's starting and how people can apply.
Yes, absolutely. So the first step to get a man to open up is you want to demonstrate that you care about his feelings. You want
Mm.
to ask him open-ended feeling questions. How are you? How are you doing? How are you feeling? If he's in the middle of telling a story, feel free to chime in and be like, oh my gosh, that sounds really intense. How did that make you feel? Invite him in a loving, warm way to speak into his feelings. That's going to help you cultivate that emotional sanctuary space that he truly and deeply needs. And the second step to get a man to open up is to be open in the way that you are wanting him to be open to you.
Mm.
Demonstrate that openness and that vulnerability. Talk about your feelings. Share what's coming up for you. Continue to demonstrate to him, hey, this is the way that I love to talk about my feelings. And because remember, a relationship is a mirror. And so the way that you're showing up will end up being unconsciously or consciously mirrored back by him. Okay.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
third step is to acknowledge his attempts or his efforts to be vulnerable. Thank him for sharing his feelings or his heart with you. Tell him how much you appreciate, him being open with what's going on in his life, with his struggles. with his good times and his bad times. And if you do that, you're helping to cultivate a different dynamic. You're helping him wire in that it's okay to be vulnerable. He's not going to be hurt. He's not going to be judged for it. And it's going to help him feel safe. And that emotional safety is the key part of him opening up to you. I guarantee it.
That is so true. I really like these steps you shared. I think they could be helpful in all situations, no matter where you are in your love life or any area of life, right? So let's talk about Mastery of Connection, your free course. Again, #1 course I recommend to everybody. I would love to hear the details on that.
Absolutely. So it's going to be an epic 3-week live course experience with video modules, over 50 video lessons. We're going to look at your beliefs, your attachment style, and your personality type, which is going to help you understand why you connect with yourself and others the way that you do, so that you can transform your relationships from the inside out. And you're going to get office hours with me every week to get live coaching from me on anything coming up for you along the way. And you're going to get over 50 hours of live workshops with me on our 3rd week of our course. So it's an outrageous value. I guarantee you, if you come along with us, you're going to end this journey with us radically different in a much more expanded state than you began. And a lot of women in my community, a lot of women that have done this work have attracted beautiful relationships. They've healed decades of trauma, and it's truly transformed their lives. So that's what I want for each and every one of you. And I'd love for you to come along with us on this journey.
Absolutely. I just love hearing all the testimonials. We've had thousands of women literally from my community go through this course. They all say it's just completely life-changing and transformative. So if anyone is listening to this after February of 2022, they can still apply, right? And get on the waiting list for the next one?
100%. Okay. Yes. I'll be offering a different iteration of this later on in the year. And so be sure to join, be sure to sign up at the link below, and we'll put you on the wait list, and we'll keep you notified on the next opportunity to come along on this adventure.
Amazing. So everyone, please go check that out. I just cannot recommend it enough. Matt, this was great. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on this topic. And I hope I can bring you back on my podcast soon. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and we look forward to talking with you again very soon.
Can't wait, Helena. Have a good one.